They told you to apologize, to own your mistakes, to be vulnerable, honest, and accountable. Because they said taking responsibility makes you strong. Because they said humility is the mark of a good person. But that's a lie. A beautifully wrapped lie designed to disarm you. Because in the world Machiavelli lived in, and the world you live in today, apology doesn't make you strong. It makes you exposed. It makes you smaller. It's the first crack in the fortress that shields your power. Apology isn't a gesture of virtue. It's a flag raised above your castle walls telling everyone where to attack. When you apologize, you give your enemy a weapon. You confirm guilt. You offer them leverage. You gift them the moral high ground. And Machiavelli knew that if you must appear humble, it should be only to deceive, never to admit defeat. Because the truth is brutal. You should never apologize unless you're lying. I'm not talking about brushing someone's arm on a crowded sidewalk or missing a phone call. I'm talking about the kind of apology that shakes your identity. The kind where you bend your spine and lower your eyes because you've been taught that submission is noble. Because they convinced you that bowing makes you righteous. That remorse makes you trustworthy. But here's the problem. When you apologize, people don't always forgive. They remember. You showed your neck. And they took note. I messed up. I'm sorry. I was wrong. You were right. The words sound virtuous. But they carve hierarchies into stone. Because now they own the narrative. Now they can say, even he admitted he was wrong. Even she apologized for that. She knows she's not trustworthy. And that's how it begins. The slow erosion of power through well-intentioned self-humiliation. Because the very structure of an apology is a power exchange. You become the inferior. They become the judge. You're seeking approval. They decide if you're worthy. It doesn't matter if they say, it's okay. The hierarchy is already set. And in a Machiavellian world, hierarchy determines everything. Respect, fear, leverage, control. Once you kneel, they never forget that you did. You cannot lead people who have seen you apologize too many times. You cannot influence those who have collected your guilt like currency. And Machiavelli would say, a man who humbles himself without advantage invites contempt, not loyalty. But let's address the obvious question. What if you truly did mess up? What if you were at fault? Shouldn't you own it? But not through apology, through correction. If you want to fix it quietly, completely, without ceremony. Don't broadcast your guilt. Don't beg for understanding. Don't kneel before the public. Don't lower yourself and ask forgiveness like a supplicant trembling before a throne. Machiavelli's doctrine is this. Do what must be done, say what must be said, but never lower your stature in the process. Here's the key. Responsibility is not the same as apology. You can take full responsibility without ever giving away the power position. Because apologizing is like stepping off a throne, handing them the crown and saying, here, judge me as you wish. Machiavelli would never do that. He'd assess the damage. He'd correct the course. He'd make strategic amends if it served his interests. But he would never confess in a way that made him vulnerable. Look at the most dominant figures in politics, business, media. They rarely apologize. And when they do, it's late, vague, and wrapped in ambiguity. If anyone was offended, things could have been clearer. We regret how this was perceived. Why? Because they're not truly apologizing. They're protecting their position. They understand that apologies, in the public mind, don't repair trust. They invite further scrutiny, reputation decay, and the loss of frame. That's the Machiavellian lens. Real apologies cost you reputation. Strategic apologies earn you time, sympathy, or access. Machiavelli would only apologize to disarm an enemy temporarily, to trick someone into believing they held moral authority, to gain access to a deal, an alliance, or a room he couldn't enter through force. In all cases, the apology would be a tool, not a truth. He who seeks to be good in all acts is sure to come to ruin among so many who are not good. Never apologize, unless you are manipulating. And if you are, make it believable. Make it soft. Make it work for you. But never, ever let it be sincere. Because a sincere apology means you still believe you're equal to the person you're bowing to. And in Machiavellian power games, no one is ever truly equal. Machiavelli wouldn't apologize. He'd disappear into silence. Because in the political arena, the courtroom, the battlefield, or today's internet, silence is safer than confession and more dangerous than denial. Let someone else name the mistake. Let them speculate. Let them spin themselves into doubt. But you, stay silent. Because the moment you refuse to clarify, you hand them something far more powerful than an apology: doubt. When you don't apologize, here's what happens. Some will attack harder, desperate to provoke a confession. Some will second-guess their own judgment, wondering if they misunderstood you. Some will expose their own emotional instability, needing you to say something so they can feel secure again. That's how silence works. It becomes a mirror. It reflects them, not you. And that's Machiavellian mastery, controlling the battlefield by refusing to step onto it. Because it's not titles that honor men, but men who honor titles. And so too, it's not the apology that restores your reputation. It's who remains composed under pressure to break. You apologize and they gain closure. You stay silent and they stay obsessed. Most people explain, clarify, overspeak, beg not to be misunderstood. But power is preserved in unreadability. Machiavelli understood that fear, curiosity, and suspicion last far longer than understanding. So what does he do? He lets you wonder. Did he do it? Why won't he say something? Does he not care at all? And that wondering becomes emotional leverage. Because people can't move on from what they can't explain. They revisit it, replay it, reanalyze it. You don't lose control, you multiply it. Imagine this. Someone calls you out, demands an apology, puts you on the spot. Most people collapse. They try to defend themselves. They try to say the right thing. They explain their good intentions. I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention. But Machiavelli would never fight on someone else's terms. He wouldn't defend intention. He'd redirect attention. He'd say, I hear that's how it came across. That wasn't the experience I had. There are always many sides to a story. He never admits guilt. He introduces complexity. And complexity makes apology unnecessary. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. In modern terms, the moment someone demands your apology, you're already being positioned beneath them. Refuse the positioning, not by fighting but by fogging the glass. Machiavelli understood the art of emotional absorption. If someone accuses you, you don't deny. You don't react. You don't get defensive. You let them speak. Let them unload every ounce of emotion. And then you offer no justification. You simply say, that's a lot to think about. Thanks for being honest. Noted. You've given them the illusion of release but no confirmation. And because you didn't confess, they can't pin you down. You've neutralized their control by giving no resistance and no confession. Your water. Your fog. Your silence that refuses to validate the weapon aimed at you. Machiavelli would never feel guilt as a moral truth. He'd use it strategically, like a disguise. If he needed to appear remorseful, he would. Not because he was sorry, but because it worked. If he needed to seem regretful, he'd choose the moment, the tone, the audience. But behind the mask, he'd still be calculating. Because real guilt weakens. Performed guilt manipulates. In the modern world, guilt is currency. People will try to extract it from you, to trade it for your silence, your compliance, your submission. And when you apologize, you've paid the tax. You've signed the contract. You've entered their emotional economy on their terms. But when you stay silent, you force them to carry the discomfort alone. And that is psychological warfare. So what about fake apologies, the only kind Machiavelli endorsed? Not born of remorse. Not born of accountability. But born of strategy. Because the ends justify the means. And if the end requires an apology, lie. Perform. It's about lowering defenses. It's about disarming suspicion. Machiavelli would apologize, humble, sincere, perfectly timed. And suddenly they relax. They drop the sword. They stop the chase. He recalibrates. He gains access, influence, sympathy. And he moves again while they're no longer watching. Because the apology wasn't peace. It was a Trojan horse. Sometimes, the only path forward in conflict or failure is to pretend you're retreating. A calculated apology makes you look harmless. It reframes you from opponent to misunderstood ally. This is how Machiavelli would handle powerful enemies. He'd admit to overstepping. He'd confess his words may have sounded too direct. He'd regret any confusion caused. It sounds soft. Feels safe. But behind it, there's no change, no regret, no surrender, just forward movement under the cloak of humility. One must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. Sometimes the fox says, "I'm sorry I frightened you," even while circling your weak side. Watch the best manipulators today. They know exactly when to apologize. They apologize right before launching a comeback. They express regret in a way that refocuses attention on them, not their offense. Machiavelli would do the same. He wouldn't fight every accusation. He'd take one knee, then rise higher when the crowd softened. Here's one of the most dangerous manipulations. I know I hurt you, and I truly hate myself for it. What sounds like vulnerability is actually bait for emotional reattachment. You're not seeking forgiveness. You're forcing the other person to feel guilty for your guilt. They forget their pain because they're now too busy soothing yours. It rebalances the emotional dynamic in your favor. And now they hesitate to push back, to question, to leave. You've apologized, but you've flipped the frame. Now you're the victim, and they're the aggressor if they don't forgive you. Machiavelli would sometimes make the apology public, a calculated spectacle. Perfect phrasing. Perfect timing. Perfect lesson learned. But once the crowd clapped and moved on, he'd discard the guilt. He wouldn't shrink. He'd grow. Because the apology wasn't the end, it was the setup. Let's be clear, this kind of apology requires precision. If it's too sincere, you lose power. If it's too cynical, you lose trust. But if it's done surgically, with the right tone, the right motive, the right aftermath, you don't just keep control. You gain more than you had before. Because in today's world, apologies are no longer about integrity. They're about compliance. Society doesn't want your growth. It wants your submission. Not your transformation, but your public display of weakness. And that's why Machiavelli would destroy the modern apology trap. Because he knew men are quick to forget benefits but slow to forget injuries. And when you apologize, you carve the injury into memory. You brand yourself guilty, even if you weren't. Once you're expected to apologize, you've already lost the frame. Because now it's not about what you did, it's about how someone felt. You say, "That wasn't my intention." They say, "Intentions don't matter." You say, "Let me explain." They say, "Don't make excuses." You say, "I'm sorry if you misunderstood." They say, "That's not a real apology." See the trap? You're not apologizing for forgiveness. You're apologizing into a bottomless pit. And the more you feed it, the more they demand. Because that's the ultimate truth Machiavelli understood. People don't destroy what they fear. They don't betray what they respect. And they don't punish what they can't define. The unexplained man becomes a figure of fascination, a puzzle that can't be solved. And humans are addicted to puzzles. They circle you, study you, guess at your motives. And while they're busy guessing, they're not attacking. Machiavelli would rather be an enigma than a confessor. Because confession demands clarity, and clarity demands vulnerability. Vulnerability demands punishment. But an enigma? An enigma is untouchable. Think about the leaders, celebrities, business moguls who faced scandal. The ones who fell? They explained. They sobbed on camera. They issued long statements. They begged forgiveness. And the mob devoured them anyway. But look at the ones who said nothing. The ones who let time do the talking. The ones who let rumors swirl, but refused to bow. Over time, people got bored. The mob moved on. Silence erased the urgency of their outrage. The same crowd who demanded their heads eventually grew tired of screaming at shadows. Because outrage needs fuel. It needs engagement. And when you refuse to engage, outrage starves. Machiavelli would exploit this flaw in human nature. He'd understand that silence isn't weakness, it's a weapon. Because while you say nothing, others speak for you. Some defend you. Some attack you. Some invent new narratives entirely. And the battlefield shifts without you ever stepping onto it. People fear a silent man more than a guilty one. A guilty man can be punished. A silent man can only be guessed at. And Machiavelli knew, power is not just in what you say, it's in what you refuse to say. When you stay silent, you deny others the victory of clarity. You deny them the satisfaction of moral certainty. And humans crave certainty even more than they crave justice. Take it from them, and you take their power. Here's another reason Machiavelli would never apologize publicly. Because public apologies don't heal wounds, they record them in history. Consider this, when a powerful person apologizes publicly, it's never over. The media replays the clip for years. Social media memes it. Future interviews bring it up. Even if you build 10 new empires, someone will say, "Isn't that the guy who apologized for insert incident?" You become a permanent symbol of guilt. And Machiavelli would never allow himself to be defined by a single moment of weakness. He understood the most crucial law of perception. People remember labels, not details. It's not, "He made a mistake and corrected it." It's, "He's the man who apologized." Apologizing publicly brands you. It etches your vulnerability into collective memory. Even if you rise again, you rise as the redeemed one, not the dominant one. And dominance, unquestioned, unblemished, is the currency of power. Machiavelli would rather people whisper rumors about him than have certainty that he ever bowed. And here's the irony. Modern society preaches forgiveness, but it's addicted to punishment. People will chant, "We just want you to own it." But the moment you do, they use your apology as evidence. They say, "See? He admitted it." And the punishment begins anew. Machiavelli would see this game for what it is, not about justice, but about control. And he would refuse to play it. Instead, he'd build his power quietly. He'd fix his mistakes in private. He'd replace his past with new victories. And then, if absolutely necessary, he'd whisper a single line of regret, just enough to appear human, but never enough to appear beaten. Because Machiavelli understood that redemption isn't given by the mob, it's seized through new achievements. Consider how often you've seen headlines like, "Celebrity issues heartfelt apology." CEO admits fault in scandal. Influencer takes accountability. And yet, how many of those people vanished anyway? How many lost their positions, their endorsements, their influence? Because the modern apology isn't closure, it's a beginning. It's the beginning of endless scrutiny. Now they'll track every step, every word, searching for signs you haven't truly changed.